Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes sir, then again I'm falling. Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes sir, then again I'm falling. Let Jesus work it out. Need your Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Need your Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Need your Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Oh, work it out. You work it out for Mother Lisa. Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes sir, then again I'm falling. Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes sir, then again I'm falling. Let Jesus work it out. Need your Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Need your Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Need your Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out.
All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos. And today we got a quick little stream. I suspect it will be in and out of here, certainly before the 2-hour mark. My goal is an hour and a half. And I really wasn't going to do today's topic. We're going to be talking about what's next, the memetics of the Trump assassination attempt in the state of America. And I wasn't going to talk about the Trump assassination. Obviously, I hosted a 4-hour open panel, and we had Jay Dyer, Rachel Wilson, Father Deacon Dr. Ananias, BLA, Glenn Lawrence, Grid One Motorsports. Tons of people joined. So that's still available up on the YouTube channel here. And in that one, we talked a little bit more about the specifics of the case, the incompetency, the allowance of Thomas Crooks. So today we're not really getting into any of the theories. I know some people think that it was all staged, and that really has nothing to do with today's analysis. One of the things that came to my mind watching the RNC convention is just an analysis of the memetics and the semiotics of everything that's transpired, because it's now 1 week from the assassination attempt. And so we've got 1 week to kind of go over. And while I was watching it, I was just looking at the symbols, the memetics. And obviously the RNC convention, I don't know if you guys watched some of it. The day 4 is the one where Trump spoke at it, and it's got the most publicity, if you will. But yeah, the music, cringe things. We got a pagan Sikh prayer, Amber Rose, a porn star who has an active OnlyFans presented. But I think there's really something interesting just looking at the symbols of what was going on during the Trump assassination at the rally, the reactions afterwards, the RNC convention. And it really does seem like an Overton window shift. It seems like there is a significant change. So when I say what's next, obviously nobody knows what's going to happen. I'm certainly, nobody that can tell the future. But I'm going to throw out a few possibilities, just topics. But really, my goal is just to look at the memetics. So whether it was totally staged or not, again, I don't believe that was to be the case. I know some people here in the live chat think it was. Well, even if it was, we're just looking at the memetics of the situation and then kind of suggesting potential outcomes into the future. But in regards to what's next, I have a few bullet points that I think are interesting. The first one is obviously an Overton window shift. And I've been seeing a lot of black pilling. There's a lot of contentious disagreements within the sort of quote unquote conservative movement about everything that's going on. And I'm with everybody that talks about, Amber Rose and the Sikh prayer by Harmeet Dillon. Totally agree with all that stuff. But at the same time, we've talked about multiple previous streams that millennials, Gen Z conservatives are certainly to the right of the boomers and the Gen Xers. And so I see what's happening as really a opening of possibility in the future. And it really is an Overton window shift. And if you guys been following what's going on X, I think that's absolutely the case. And I know a lot of people were blackpilling because the RNC convention was, in a way, a sort of worship of Israel. And we'll discuss a little bit of those memetics and the semiotics, coming at it from an Orthodox Christian perspective, because those who are familiar with our theology, obviously, the Messiah has already come. So who is the Jewish Messiah that they're waiting for? And historically speaking, and the theology of the church, that's essentially our Antichrist. But we'll discuss more of that here moving forward. But I think there's a real opportunity that's emerging, and there is a shift in the Overton window to the right. And as again, if Trump is able to become president, we know that the elections aren't legitimate, to say the least. You have to be careful talking about that here on YouTube. That is a sure way to get your stream taken down. But those who are interested, those who are gaining fervor from, again, the memetics of the masculinity, the patriarchy. This is something I got videos from some of the news media talking about, the white patriarchy when they're watching the RNC convention. This is coming from MSNBC, and the VP choice, JD Vance, who, of course, we've already discussed in that open panel, has connections back to Peter Thiel. That was sort of his protege. Peter Thiel, owner of Palantir, part of the PayPal mafia. I did a whole stream on contemporary vampires. He also has a company called Para Ambrosia, which allows you to be injected with the blood of, I think it's like 16 to 24-year-olds, or maybe it's 18 to 24-year-olds, because it rejuvenates your tissue. So I'm no fan of Peter Thiel. He's a German, a homosexual, sort of tech guy who's incredibly influential. And JD Vance, that was kind of who he got his start under. So I'm not here to defend Trump or JD Vance. Obviously, in that open panel, we talked about voting, and people kept asking me, am I going to vote? And I said, yeah, I'm going to vote because, for example, during the 2020 situation, my sheriff here in the county that I live in was great because he was highly conservative, didn't arrest people or force masks or anything like that. So I think local elections still matter. And I think that if you are wanting to make sure that your local government and the local area that you live reflects your value system, I think it's still important to vote. Now, at the federal level, is it fraudulent? Is it rigged? Yeah, we know to some degree it is. And even at the RNC convention, this was brought up multiple times, and Trump has vowed that if he is able to become president, that we're going to be moving to paper ballots, which certainly would help with some of the fraudulent activities that occurred in 2020. But just watching this whole thing, obviously I have my own criticisms of Trump. So as we go through the memetics are going to be very complimentary towards Donald Trump and the general conservative movement when we go through all the evidence of the semiotics of everything. But just to get it out there before we get into it, I have my own criticisms as an Orthodox Christian. The LGBTQ stuff, his failures, becoming president, didn't build the wall, didn't secure elections, hired all the wrong people, John Bolton, Nikki Haley, right? There's a lot about Trump, if you do hold traditional Christian values, to sort of be upset about. But at the same time, I've also seen some conservatives, because of their traditional Christian values, so one example, I don't follow Nick Fuentes because I'm blocked by him, but I saw that he's been very critical, and he was looking at the RNC and the general critiques of the RNC. I totally agree with the RNC convention. But again, we're going to get into the memetics of it and why I think it's actually beneficial to traditional Christian values moving forward. But I think that there is benefits that if Trump supposedly was to get elected. Now, at the same time, because Peter Thiel and we've seen Elon Musk backing, we see that the PayPal mafia and a lot of these tech investors, that they are now aligning themselves with Donald Trump. We know about the Adelsons. We know about the Jewish money that have they've contributed millions of dollars to Donald Trump. We understand all that. And I suspect, again, if he was elected, that the war between Ukraine and Russia, really the West and Russia, I suspect that would probably come to a halt. But what would worry me as an Orthodox Christian is getting involved with Israel and Iran. And this was something that JD Vance made a comment right after he was selected as the vice president nominee with Trump, that he was already talking about going to war with Iran. This was because the news headlines that Iran had wanted to assassinate Trump, this or that. Now Iran's come out and said that they had nothing to do with this. And it seems like a very convenient story for, again, maybe the Israeli lobby, if you will, to blame this whole thing that really, the 3 encrypted accounts that Thomas Crooks has may be tied with the CIA or maybe with Israeli Mossad influence. Who knows what's going on? I'm not going to speculate on that so much, but I could see that with the Trump administration that we might get involved in Middle Eastern wars, which would, again, if you've been following this YouTube channel, we've talked a lot about Orthodox eschatology and prophecies and stuff like that. It seems like we are on the brink of the Great World War that many contemporary saints have discussed. So what's next moving forward? What are they going to try to assassinate Trump again? Are they going to kill him? I've been on record saying that I just can't see how the powers that be would let him back in office. But with the memetic effect of the assassination attempt, there's so much support behind them. They can't really rig the election to the same degree. I mean, they can, but nobody would believe that Joe Biden is going to be the president. And people have been speculating Michelle Obama, Gavin Newsom. But I would suspect that the Democrats, given the fervor that's behind them, they wouldn't want to use one of their better candidates during this election. I actually suspect that they're going to go ahead and continue with Joe Biden. Now, I know that's not a popular opinion. A lot of people think maybe it's going to be Kamala Harris, and it very well could be. But I think whoever's they're going to run against Donald Trump after their DNC convention, they may just appoint somebody else to be the nominee. But I can't see them using one of their better candidates, because if they lose, that's going to be so detrimental to a potential election for a Democrat in 2028. So moving forward, I think that I can't see the Democrats using one of their best candidates. I could see Kamala Harris. I could see Joe Biden. I could see maybe Kamala Harris runs with one of these Democratic governors around the country. That's a very possibility. I suspect it's not going to be Gavin Newsom, because just based on my read on him, he really has his eyes on 2028, and he wouldn't want to jeopardize his electability by losing an election in 2024. In regards to Trump getting hired, one of the big problems, and I saw Mike Cernovich was speaking about this, is the terrible people that Trump hired in 16 and 2017. Now, has he learned his lesson? A lot of people suspect that he's not going to do that, and hopefully he doesn't. And hopefully, if he was elected, he would appoint serious people to try to uproot some of the bureaucratic nonsense that is, again, the deep state, the swamp that's lived in Washington, D.C. for a very long time. I would suspect almost at least half a century, but you could say even longer. So the long-term trajectory here. So I have a nuanced point that I get that the PayPal mafia and all this different stuff. And I've been very critical of Elon Musk, and Elon Musk vowed support for Donald Trump right after the attempt happened. And he's now said he's going to be donating $45 million a month to a new super PAC to get Trump elected. Now, we've talked about Neuralink. We've talked about all the companies. I did a whole stream going through the life of Elon Musk and why he's a false savior. Agreed. And Trump is no savior at either, right? Now, hopefully this assassination attempt, according to him, has brought him closer to God, and God willing, hopefully that's true. But the powers that be, I see a sort of digital infrastructure that's going to be built. This is why I suspect the PayPal mafia, and shout out to Jose Miguel, who was in the open panel. He talked about this multiple times in the open panel, so check that out. That you could see, and I follow a lot of Whitney Webb stuff as well. So if you're not familiar with Whitney Webb, check her out. She does really great work. She was kind of one of the leaders in breaking a lot of the stories around Jeffrey Epstein, but she's been doing really good work in regards to Bitcoin and the financial industry, and highlighting, one of the things that Trump has done that I appreciate is a criticism of the Federal Reserve and his support, at least for this run at the presidency, regarding Bitcoin. And I watched a video that she put out, I think it was a couple days ago, that was really interesting concerning Bitcoin and why the U.S. government, I mean, obviously JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon has now said that they support Bitcoin. They see this as an option moving forward, and that this may be a way to alleviate the debt of the U.S. dollar and make sure that it actually maintains some type of a global supremacy by hitching it to Bitcoin and some of the digital currencies, Tether, that type of thing. So I suspect whether Trump, if Trump is elected, that not so much CBDCs coming out of the Federal Reserve, but I could see digital infrastructure being built to lead towards that direction. And, obviously with Israel, as a Orthodox Christian, I see that they're utilizing a lot of this energy, this memetic energy regarding masculinity, patriarchy, white Americans, although it's not explicit. I don't want to be so focused on the racial elements of the memetics, the fighting spirit, family. These things have been really overt for the last week or so. And we're going to talk about the assassination attempt of like Corey um, um, Comparatore, and how he himself as a firefighter died protecting his daughter and his wife. This semiotics, I think, is very, very powerful. But I could see also the spirit of the evil one when I watched the RNC convention and all the Israeli flags. I mean, people literally coming out on stage and talking about God, 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 never mentioning Jesus Christ, but talking about Israel for 30, 40 minutes. You know, it's that the evil one is utilizing something that is authentic and true: patriarchy, masculinity, nationalism, patriotism, family, and that this energy is going to be sort of, I called it the devil's alchemy, is going to be utilized to push a general movement towards, again, the coming of the Antichrist. Now, I don't know when that's going to be, and I don't mean to sound so ridiculous, but as an Orthodox Christian, we're moving towards it some degree or another. Now, it goes through waves, and based on the repentance of the people of the nation. And America has been a incredibly sinful nation, and it's unfortunate to see that the RNC has taken out traditional marriage from their platform. That this was the first year I saw Eric Trump bragging that it's no longer, Republican Party no longer defines marriage between a man and a woman. Now, at the same time, regarding the memetics of all that, you know, they are viewing this election as a win or die election. And are they just trying to get as many people as possible? This is why the Waiguro prayer occurred by Harmeet Dillon at the RNC. Is this why they're, again, lowering the definitions of what traditional marriage is? I suspect so, to some degree. They're trying to make it a more inclusive party. And I don't think that's necessarily a black pill, because the younger people who are going to take over this party within a generation are going to be so much more to the right than the one that already exists. And so just as Trump has taken over the shell of the neocon Republican RNC party, I see young people, millennials and Gen Z, are going to do that as well in the future. And I see that as a white pill. I don't see that as a black pill, as many people have been describing online. So that's one of my general points that I wanted to say. And in regards to what's next concerning this, I don't think anybody's going to get fired. And I really suspect, I really question whether, even if Donald Trump gets elected, I've seen a handful of people talking about the prosecution, that they're going to go after these people like Mayorkas or whoever it may be in the deep state. I hope they do that. Obviously, justice needs to be done. But I can't imagine the system that is, which I believe is totally entrenched in Washington, D.C., ever to allow that to happen. So I suspect what we're seeing with all the cringe, the paganism, the homosexuality at the RNC, this is part of just trying to get this guy elected. And I think that it's actually a sort of a white pill for young people, that if they can infiltrate the RNC, that it's going to be our party in the future. And that's something to be hopeful for. Now, I want to get into the assassination. I want to get into reactions. I got videos from a bunch of libs and liberals, leftists, and how they all think it was staged. They think Trump was up to this whole thing. And I just want to go over the memetics of the assassination, reactions from various people, the RNC convention, and then kind of wrap it up. So we're going to be hitting on tons of the memetics, which I think, I have a thing. I looked up what's the symbolism of the ear in the Bible. I have an article actually describing that a little bit. Giga Chad Koger says Elpidophoros was there, a horrible representative of Orthodoxy. Yeah, no doubt about that. In Elpidophoros, unlike our Orthodox prayers, he never ended it in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. So we can see this ecumenism, which I've already mentioned, the paganism, the Waiguro prayer. I already see this as being part of the RNC. Now, as they move in a way towards the left, the general RNC platform, as long as it potentially gets the guy elected and good people potentially can take powerful roles in the government, I think that is a benefit, although I don't want to compromise my value system for that. So, yeah, I totally agree with you, Giga Chad Kroger there. So, anyways, before we get into everything, I got so many videos, and we're going to end by watching the Tucker Carlson speech, because I watched much of the RNC convention just as a spectator, right? Just as somebody looking at the symbols of everything. And I thought Tucker Carlson's speech was probably the best one. It was only like 11 minutes long. We're going to watch that here in a few. But of course, Hulk Hogan, Dana White, all these people were there. We're going to discuss all that. But before we do, just want to do some quick housekeeping and tell everybody that if you want to support my work, one of the best things you can do is go over to my website and become a website member. We got 3 different types of memberships. If you want access to an exclusive video library, of which I'll be making a video here on the persecution of Christians. I'm going to put half of it here on YouTube, but the full video is going to be behind the paywall. Go to my website and become a website member using this link right here. I'd greatly appreciate that. This is one of the best ways you can support my work. Also, twice a month, we do a private think tank meeting with men around the world. Right now it's only men, but we meet and we discuss the latest things that are happening. And it's a very erudite group of people. And if you'd like to be part of that private group, you just become a premium member and you'll get links for whenever we do set up our meetings. Also, if anybody's interested in setting up a one-on-one session, you can do so with this link right here. I would greatly appreciate that as well. We can dive into a private meeting and discuss any topic your heart desires. You just use that link that I just posted, and I'll contact you and ask you maybe what topics you're interested in and what times we can potentially set up a meeting. And also, if you want to sponsor a stream, we got a sponsored stream I'll be doing tomorrow on the Orthodox Saints of the British Isles, which is going to be very interesting. And we have then another sponsored stream. We'll be going over the movie Master and Commander with BLA. That is scheduled for Tuesday evening. So that's another sponsored stream. And then later next week, I'll be doing another sponsored stream on a deconstruction of the Church of Christ, one of the Protestant churches that's prominent here in the United States. So those are 3 sponsored streams that are all lined up to go. And I'm going to knock all those out in the next week. So if you have a topic you would like me to do a stream on, feel free to use that link right there, sign up, and I would be happy to reach out to you and you let me know what type of topic you're interested in, and we can organize a sponsored stream. Also, if you'd like to support my work, you can go to the website, get you a t-shirt. I got tons of different designs. Would greatly appreciate that. And also, if you're in the market for any Orthodox content, go to orthodoxdepot.com, orthodoxdepot.com. Use promo code COTEL. They got icons, incense, prayer ropes, whatever it may be. If you're in the market for those type of items or you're looking, check out orthodoxdepot.com first. This is a great Orthodox company right here in the Midwest United States. And we use promo code COTEL. You'll help me out, and we'll be able to help out a great Orthodox company. So if you're in the market, check out orthodoxdepot.com. Okay. So now I want to get into all this memetic stuff that I have, because I think it's actually really interesting. And I haven't seen anybody actually address this angle of everything that's happened. So let me pull up. I got a bunch of stuff that I want to show. Let me pull that up. So first, what is memetics? Okay. What is a meme? We've all heard internet memes. But meme really got going through Richard Dawkins, and he equated it to a gene in regards to it's a piece of information that self-replicates. And so a meme is an idea, behavior, or style that spreads by means of imitation from person to person within a culture and often carries symbolic meaning representing a particular phenomenon or theme. This is why I want to analyze the memetic impact of this assassination in this past week that has occurred. A meme acts as a unit for carrying cultural ideas, symbols, or practices that can be transmitted from one mind to another through writing, speech, gestures, rituals, or imitatable phenomenon with a mimicked theme. Supporters of the concept regard memes as cultural analogs to genes in that they self-replicate, mutate, and respond to selective pressures. In popular language, a meme may refer to an internet meme, typically an image that is remixed, copied, or circulated in a shared cultural experience online. Now, I'm also going to use the term semiotics in case you've never heard that term as well. Semiotics is the systematic study of sign processes and the communication of meaning. And semiotics, a sign is defined as anything that communicates intentional or unintentional meaning or feelings to the sign's interpreter. So now we have that laid out for some of the terminology that I want to use. I want to begin now with the assassination itself. And so the first meme, the first memetic influence that I think is interesting is one, the graph that saved, according to Donald Trump, his life. So Trump uses a lot of images and graphs and stuff during his rallies, but for the last few months, according to what I was looking up, he hadn't been using any for like the last 5 to 6 months. And this rally in Butler, Pennsylvania was the first one in which he was using graphs. And the graph that he was showing was the problem of mass migration, illegal immigration across the southern border in the United States. And so I wanted to point out the memetics of that itself, right? So national sovereignty. What are we seeing that's happening in Europe? What is Agenda 21? This is about a mass migration of people from third world to first world countries. Now, the reason being, obviously, there's a lot of theories. I suspect it's to degrade the national unity of various countries so that they're more malleable, cause internal conflict, and that they'll be more susceptible to the coming globalist agenda, which is already at hand, right? And so the fact that this graph is supposedly the one that Trump was looking at that, quote unquote, saved his life, I think is very interesting. This is a memetic response, again, to something that people, the demographics of these various nation states that are upset with all this mass migration. This is a very central topic, whether it be the UK, France, Germany, or the United States. It's the same problem. So interesting. Again, whether you think it's staged or not, this is still going to be true. It's still the same graph. And so it being used to talk about this mass migration process, I think is very interesting. Nationalism, demographics itself. Now, the other memetic feature that we saw coming out of the Trump assassination attempt was all these people who claimed that they were talking to police and even the Secret Service, telling them that there was a shooter on the roof. What is the memetics of that? Well, part of what we've discussed with the Western civilization and individualism and this breakdown of community is communal activism, communities acting in response to something. And I think that the Trump rally is another indication memetically of that, whatever you think occurred, but people calling out the shooter before the attempt, people acting as a sort of immune system, if you will, and trying to highlight this, one, I think is very interesting and signifies that this MAGA movement, no matter what you think of it, is still an attempt, consciously or subconsciously by some people, is to preserve the community itself, to preserve that which unifies us, because we are stronger together than separate, and divide and conquer is obviously the name of the game. And if we're all just individuals and we don't have a shared communal ethos, we're screwed. And this is part of the central cultural war that is at hand. So again, very interesting memetics there. Now, the incompetency of the federal government, the SS, the Secret Service, right? Again, interesting memetic connection there, right? The SS, if you guys know what that is, and that's being used obviously to represent the Secret Service. But they allowed the shooter to take his position. We now know that he was there for 26 minutes. He was on the roof. We know that 3 hours beforehand that Thomas Crooks had a rangefinder. We know that he was spotted by people. Now there's suspicion of a potential second shooter. I'm not going to, again, the stream isn't so much about getting into all the details of everything that happened. It's really about the semiotics and the memetics of it. And maybe that's true. I would highly recommend, there's a guy on X. He's a CIA, NSA whistleblower, former contractor. His name's Tony. What is it? Saruga? Tony Saruga. I highly recommend following his account if you want to know some of the latest in regards to the analyzation of the gunshots and the audios. Some of the theories that are coming out. He is an expert in tracking like digital footprints and stuff like this. Very, very interesting X account. Tony Saruga. Check that out if you guys are interested. But the memetics of the federal government being so incompetent, the Secret Service, this is supposed to be the most protective force in the United States or in the world, really, right? That's the reputation of the Secret Service. And yet what we see, the female Secret Service agent, let me pull this up real quick. The female Secret Service agent who couldn't holster her gun. Did you guys see this? Let me see if I have that real quick. Where is that? May have been in my bookmarks. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Let me start playing some of these videos. I got tons of videos to go through as we talk about these memetics. So let me play this one first. And this is hilarious, right? Again, it plays in memetics. Look at this TikTok video and how it it discusses it. It's hilarious. But again, it's highlighting the DEI. We see that Kim Cheadle, the new director of the CIA, or the Secret Service, rather, I'm sorry. She was working for PepsiCo. Again, what are the memetics of PepsiCo? All this poisonous food that is, again, fattening our country, causing diabetes, the unhealthiness of the American person, the stereotype of the being fat and obese. Well, she comes from that world. And here's the Secret Service agent who we see as overweight. She's a female. She looks totally confused. There's a video of her during the point in which Trump is shot and he falls down on the stage, in which she's saying, "Oh, where do we go? Where do we go? What are we doing?" Totally lost, right? Now, just watch this video.
After Secret Service Barbie, a highly trained member of the Secret Service, removes her weapon from its holster for the very first time in her career. She struggles to return her pea shooter as though it's her first day on the job. Fortuitously, her skills from a previous life as an amateur actress come into play, allowing her to convincingly mimic the swift draw of the weapon and scan the horizon for threats. Chewing her gum nonchalantly, she attempts to exude a tactical demeanor, reminiscent of a fusion between the Blues Brothers and Rosie O'Donnell. Despite her efforts, our agent's attempt to return her wireless hole punch to its home results in another failure. While she may have faltered at this most basic of tasks, she certainly looked cool while doing it.
So again, the memetics, right? What are the general themes that I said at the beginning of the stream? These are the general themes that I think all the memetics point towards: patriarchy, masculinity, beautiful women, especially when we get into the RNC convention, despite the paganism, the degeneracy, all that different stuff. Beautiful women was certainly a common denominator that kept emerging. The fighting spirit and family. And this right here, the memetics of the female Secret Service agent flies right in the face of masculinity and the importance of patriarchy. And I saw women who were, on the more feminist side of things even say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have women protecting men, highlighting that, even again, the memetic impact is causing an alteration and change in people's perceptions. I think that's a positive thing. And so she can't holster her weapon. The stereotype of women and guns, not true for all women. I'm friends with Rachel Wilson. She's actually a really good shot. And she's done gun classes and certifications and stuff like that with her husband, Andrew. Shout out to the Wilsons, by the way. But general stereotypes of women are memetically impacted and reinforced by the female Secret Service agent, along with her being overweight, right? This idea about fat acceptance, DEI, the importance of hiring women, the memetics of the whole thing fly in the face of that. And that's where I think, again, it's beneficial to our side when we look at the semiotic impact. Another one is during the assassination attempt, Trump is left, and I've been watching a lot of people who are former snipers or formerly part of the Secret Service. And one of their big critiques is that them jumping on top of him on stage, yes, they were trying to protect him from bullets, but many people have highlighted they're supposed to move the principal, the person who's supposed to be protected by Secret Service, off the X being the point in which the assassination attempt begins. There's videos, for example, when Ronald Reagan was shot, which was outside, not in the same setting. It wasn't like at a rally or a speech or something like that. But once the shot occurred, you move the principal immediately off the X into somewhere else, which they didn't do. And I want to play the Trump attempt. We played that in the open panel. We're going to play it again because it's going to connect back with something that I want to say regarding the actual shooting. And I'll do that in just a second. In regards to the incompetency of the federal government and the memetics of it, is many people already believe that the federal government is bloated, insignificant, incompetent, and everything that we saw, even according to the official narratives coming out, reinforce that general memetics and that general narrative. So the FBI has now been led to lead the investigation, which again causes more question marks because the FBI and the CIA are arguably the biggest worriers for me as an American citizen. I'm not so concerned with China. Yeah, they're buying up land. They're buying up our cattle. I think they own now 1/4 of all the meat production in the United States. But that doesn't worry me as much as the intelligence agencies within my own country. They're the real enemies of the state. And so the fact that the FBI is tasked to lead this investigation, and many people have questions about, again, how this even happened, memetically reinforces many of these stereotypes that we already have. And Homeland Security, Mayorkas, I forget if it's Alejandro, I think that's his first name, Mayorkas. He's a Jew from Cuba, and he is blocking the congressional investigation and getting Kim Cheadle to come testify before him. So Homeland Security is literally blocking Congress, again, we're in a representative democracy. So Congress is supposed to be the most immediate representation of the people, and yet they're blocking the potential investigation there. Again, memetically looks a little bit more like they're trying to hide something, does it not? And so I want to move in now to the actual shooting. And we, again, look at the memetics of the shooter. Many people, as soon as it happened, were talking about the physiognomy, the way that certain people looked. Is he an MK Ultra? Is it Patsy? This type of thing. And probably true. Both of his parents, I mean, who knows? I don't know about the MK Ultra. Probably, who knows? Could have just acted alone. The 3 encrypted accounts overseas, I think, is very interesting that we're not hearing more about. But the physiognomy itself, again, memetically reinforces the dysgenic stereotype of leftist, right? So I think memetically, that's really interesting. Now, I want to play the video about Trump getting shot here. Let me pull that up real quick right here. So we're going to play this full clip, and then I will get back to you about, again, the memetics of this entire situation and why I think it's so impactful just through the symbolism. So here we go.
Take a look at what happened.
Hold. When you're ready, on you. Ready? Move. Up. Move. Go.
So right here, I want to stop because memetically, we see the men jumping on top of Trump here, and there's multiple photos of the overweight woman who couldn't holster her gun was actually crowding down and hiding behind this group of Secret Service men. Again, just memetically reinforces all those stereotypes. And here we see a blonde-haired guy, a tall white male, step in and begin to take charge. Just, again, the memetics of everything. Now, another point that I think is so fascinating is that the crowd doesn't run. This was something that was a few people from the former military highlighted in video interviews that I was listening to, is that typically during events like this, the crowd flees. Everybody, it's like a mass stampede. Everybody begins running in various directions, but nobody runs. What does that say? Well, it connects back to that memetic about the communal activity, community activism, the idea that people are going to stand and fight. They're not going to flee and run. Whatever you think about Donald Trump, I'm not here to defend Donald Trump. We're just looking at the symbolism here. Very interesting. Very interesting that nobody gets up and starts running away once the shots begin to be fired.
You ready? Are we good? Shooters down. Are we good to move? We're clear. Let's move. Let's move. We're clear. Come on.
Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes.
Hold that in your head. Your body.
So we got to move to the class. What's up?
Now, again, just the memetics of that, the masculine show of strength, the willingness to stand there and tell the people to fight. Now, again, whether you think it was staged or not, that's not what I'm getting into. Just the symbolism here. Trump goes down. A bunch of white men jump on top of him to shroud him from any potential fire. We see a woman hiding behind, and there's other videos where they pick up in the microphone. She's saying, "What are we doing? What are we doing? Where are we going?" Scared, clueless. We see a white man step up, take charge, and then Trump, after he wants to get his shoes on, throws a fist up in the air as a strength of power and tells the crowd to fight, 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 of which they respond by chanting USA, USA, USA. Just memetically, that is such a powerful symbol that there was a video going viral around the world, really outside the United States, because so many people were concerned with the actual video. But this right here was a video that I saw was getting hundreds of millions of views outside the United States around the world. And this is a group of kids from Africa reenacting the event. So this is what I mean by the powers of the memetics themselves.
I want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
So some of the things that I wrote down: a white, blonde-haired man takes charge of the scenario. The crowd never runs. Again, just memetically reinforcing. He's yelling, "Fight, fight, fight." The crowd responds with USA, USA, USA. Clearly a demonstration of masculine strength. Clearly a demonstration of sort of patriarchal competency. And then Core Comparatore, right? So in addition to all that, it's the man who was killed, according to his wife and daughter. So he is a firefighter there in Pennsylvania. He was covering his wife and daughter and was shot in the head. According to one of the doctors that was there who was trying to help him, said that there was brain matter right there on the floor. So imagine his daughter and wife seeing him pass away right then and there. But the fact, again, of a man shrouding and shielding his wife and daughter, what could be more symbolic of masculinity, the protection of family, the patriarchal role as the leader of the family household? And according to his family, he was really excited to take his family to their first rally. And God rest his soul, memory eternal to Core Comparatore. And I saw that the firefighter unit that he worked with put his casket in one of their trucks and drove it to the gravesite. I think that was yesterday or the day before. So very interesting. Again, just the memetic influence of all this stuff. Now, I wanted to go because where was Trump shot in the ear? And you can already see there's already the videos all over X in regards to how slight the video was or the shot was in regards to him turning his head right at the last second. But he was shot in the ear. And so I had to do a deep dive on what does the ear represent and how is it understood within Scripture, just to get, again, the semiotics of it, the symbols. And so I wanted to show you guys this. The signification of the ears is of obedience, for the ears and hearing signify obeying, as the ears signify not only hearing and notice, but also obedience. Therefore, in the word, frequent mention is made of speaking in the ears and reading in the ears of people, and not just speaking and reading before them, as in the following passages. So here's a few biblical passages. This is Jeremiah 28:7. Hear thou these words that I speak in thine ears and in the ears of all people. First Samuel, they spake these words in the ears of the people. Let thine handmaid speak in thine ears, proclaim in the ears of thy people. Judges, speak in the ears of thy people. Exodus, hear, O Israel, the statutes and the judgment which I will speak in your ears this day. Deuteronomy, I speak these words in their ears. Moses spake all the words of the song in the ears of the people. You get it. Here's New Testament. When Jesus had ended all these words in the ears of the people, here's the conclusion. As the ear and hearing signify the reception of truth, notice, and obedience, thus the first and last of faith. Therefore, it is so often said by the Lord, hear that hath an ear to hear, let him hear. Matthew 11, and it references Mark and Luke. And because by the deaf, that is, those who do not hear, are signified in the spiritual sense, those who are not in faith of truth, because they are not in the knowledge and the consequent perception of it. Therefore, when the Lord healed one that was deaf, he put his finger into his ears and said, Ephphatha, that is, be opened, and straightway his ears were opened. That is, that all the miracles of the Lord enfold and signified states of the church. So again, whether you think that the shooting was fake or not or whatever, what does the ear represent? What does the right ear represent? And according to Trump, he has now come closer to the Lord. Whether that's true or not, who knows? I don't know his heart. But if it does, memetically, symbolically, it actually relates to the understanding of the ear being the symbol in which somebody comes closer to Christ, comes closer to God Almighty. Interesting point. Interesting little tidbit there. Now, I also want to get into, and here's Corey Comparatore, God rest his soul. So anyways, I don't want to belabor it too much. Now I want to get into the reactions. What were some of the reactions to this event? Just the memetics, right? Because we saw so many people that were professional athletes, like masculine men, immediately responded in a certain way. And I would say to some degree, feminine women responded positively to the memetics of the situation. Whether you think it was real or not, we're not getting into that. I personally think it was real, but we don't need to belabor or argue that point. But, you know, many of the people that would be a radical leftist or a progressive, their immediate response was that it was entirely staged, that it was fake. And when pressed, and I even asked a few people who thought that, like, did Corey Comparatore die? They don't really have a good answer. And I've seen two. One, that he didn't die, that it was fake. And the second one, that Trump, what he orchestrated and staged this whole event, and then allowing him to die wasn't that big of a deal. And so those are kind of my two senses on I was just trying to look online, looking at people who were in favor of progressive ideology, Joe Biden, how they responded, and how did they deal or respond when people asked, well, did the guy die at the event? It was either that he didn't die, that this was like fake news, or he did die, and Trump doesn't care because this was all part of a staged event to get him reelected. Interesting. So here is a quick video that I found really, really fascinating of a guy, James Klug, going around and asking people what they thought. Check this out.
Oh, it's a false flag.
False flag.
Yeah, false flag.
Somebody died and 2 people injured. What do you think about that?
False flag.
False flag.
I thought it was magnificently staged. It was professionally done. It almost looked real.
Wait. Staged by who?
Oh, by Mr. Trump, of course.
I think this whole thing is staged.
You think it was staged?
Yeah.
It depends on everybody's view. Yeah.
View of the assassination attempt? What do you think? Does it kind of depend on where you're standing, whether or not you agree with the assassination attempt or disagree with it?
I just don't see that being the truth, but that's my.
So this is just a clip from the full video. It's like a 14-minute video on YouTube. And it was very interesting, again, to look at the memetics of the people who were immediately responsive to Donald Trump. It was mostly married men there with their wives, typically had a Christian cross around their neck. This guy right here has a Christian cross, but based on the list, I suspect that he's a homosexual, and he's a little fat and overweight. And so just looking at physiognomy, just the semiotics of these individuals, I think is kind of eye-opening, pretty interesting. We'll continue move forward here.
I'd rather just not make any comments.
Really quick, what are you talking about the truth? What do you mean? Oh, you just don't believe it was an assassination attempt?
No.
Please don't. We're so anti-Trump. I don't even want to.
Was it a bad thing, though?
I mean,
Was it a bad thing? Would you condemn it?
oh, that he got shot at. Of course.
Right.
Of
That's all.
course, you don't do that.
That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, that's really bad. Yeah, exactly. You don't do that. Was it staged? Probably.
Staged?
Yeah.
Okay, so you think Trump maybe staged a fake assassination for support? Okay. And that resulted in somebody dying and other people being critically injured?
I haven't seen the news today. I'm not here for the news. I haven't seen anything. I'm on vacation.
So you just thought it was fake?
Of course.
One person died in the crowd, 2 critically injured. What happened there?
Small price. It wouldn't matter to Trump. Do you think he cares if people die for him to be elected? That doesn't mean anything to Trump.
Now, staged from whose side? Do you think Donald Trump staged it for attention?
Could be, or it could be the other side trying to make a scene or something. But I don't. The fact that he only got his ear and he would like sit up and said America. I don't know. Come on.
Right.
It doesn't feel normal.
What is our evidence for suggesting that it was a fake assassination
I
attempt?
think that he walked away alive with perhaps a scratch on his ear.
Yeah, it grazed his ear.
Yeah. Of course, behind the scenes, that was all fabricated. Some noise. They put a little scratch on his ear, threw a little blood on his face.
Now, so you think that they planned from 130 yards away to shoot off the corner of his ear?
And they never shot off the corner of it. That was all done by the people hanging around him. Nobody ever shot off his ear.
Okay. So you just see it grazing his ear as maybe not real. What about the people that died what about the father that died in the stand as well as the others that were critically injured?
I don't know. I can't tell, but to me, it just looks like it was planned. And bless that guy's soul for dying for this cause. I'm so sorry for that person's family.
So you think, if we're thinking that the Trump, that's a big thing to think is that Donald Trump's administration faked an assassination, got people killed to try to do this. What would you say our reasoning is for saying that, or we have no reasoning?
Just the feeling.
I haven't paid attention to anything right now because that's not where my mind is at right now. So as of right now, I just, like I said, I didn't want to talk about it.
Well, if we're not paying attention, is the right move to say that Donald Trump staged the assassination and faked an assassination against himself? Is that the right move, or is the right move just to say, I don't know?
I'm just going to say, I don't know. I'm on vacation.
Oh, well, you're against fake news, Donald. How about against being against all this other fake crap that you pull? If Trump is involved, it's a fraud.
That was a powerful moment after he got shot. Bro got shot in the ear. Yeah. And he I don't know, he showed everyone that he's strong and stuff. So
what are your thoughts about those people? Are they foolish for believing that this is a real assassination attempt?
Yeah, a lot of people are easily fooled by Donald Trump. Yeah, they're foolish.
It's a false.
And this is again the fascinating, just the memetic impact of all this stuff. I imagine many of these people that think it's totally staged, whether it is or not, but it's interesting that they immediately jump to that conclusion when they themselves would call you a conspiracy theorist for saying such a thing. I guarantee you most of those people would be upset if you didn't get the jab in 2020 and wish that you were led to a gulag or a concentration camp so you didn't infect the people, right? So it's amazing how they go along with the official narrative, except with Trump, who's an incredibly decisive and polarizing figure, that this attempt to assassinate him and this gunshot that nicked his ear, that immediately it's staged, that clearly other people had to be in on it, that Trump knew that it was going to happen, or somebody cut his ear when he jumped to the ground there. Very, very interesting, right? Because I assume these are the same people would have called you a conspiracy theorist regarding anything that has come to fruition really in the last decade, right? So the memetic impact, we're seeing a bifurcation in America right now. Those who see the symbols of the masculinity, the fight, the fighting spirit in the face of death, the crowd that never ran once the gunshots were being heard, which is unusual for a crowd. People who see that are inspired by it. And then those who see it and immediately assume that the whole thing must have been staged and that it's all fake. Very interesting. Again, whether one side, it's just interesting to see the responses. Now, here is another one, Keith Olbermann, who's been a, he's a massive liberal goon, hates Trump more than anything. This was just yesterday or 2 days ago, July 18th, that he on his podcast was saying that Trump is lying about the entire assassination attempt itself. And here's his little video.
After 5 days of no confirmation that the injury to Trump's ear in the assassination attempt was actually from a bullet, we have to now assume that they're lying about something that happened to Trump on Saturday. No one has confirmed it, and there is no good reason why no one has confirmed it. All that and much more on the Thursday Countdown edition of the podcast, now available wherever you podcast.
Now, there's a community note under it because there has been a public statement by the doctor highlighting that it just nicked Trump's ear and that he didn't actually need stitches. And there's videos that were circulating that were zoomed in, apparently witnessing the gunshot. And it looks like, if those videos are authentic and real, it looks like it hits him like right on the edge. And you can see what appeared to be, according to those videos, a piece of his ear missing. Now, again, one of the other memetic responses from this has to do with God. I couldn't help but notice when I was scrolling through X and just looking at people's responses, how many people believe that it was divine intervention. And this is something that Trump said in his speech as well. And according to his son, Donald Trump Jr., he also said in a private conversation that his father, and this was also highlighted by Tucker Carlson when he spoke with Trump behind stage, that he specifically says that he believes God saved him and that God is protecting him to some degree, and that it was God's grace for the only reason why he was able to give the RNC convention speech. So it's interesting to see that those who are more aligned with the patriarchy, masculinity, national spirit, patriotism, fighting, that they immediately refer back to a transcendent deity, the Holy Trinity itself, where, again, I suspect Keith Olbermann is an atheist. So again, just highlighting that, I find it interesting. So those who wish the shooter was successful too, this has been a huge conversation. I don't know if you guys seen Libs of TikTok, but people have been getting fired for wishing that the shooter was successful. And I've seen a lot of people, even in the Orthodox world, the orthosphere, but a lot of conservatives say that the right shouldn't participate in this. This is terrible. I can't believe that they're wanting people to get. Let's ban that person there. Oh, this is terrible. I can't believe people are using the leftist tactics of cancel culture to get them fired. And again, I was just thinking of it just symbolically. What does it mean? What is it? What could it all lead towards? And I think it's a further bifurcation. Those of you who saw when people, the conservatives or whatnot, didn't want to buy Bud Light after their Dylan Mulvaney campaign. And I saw, actually, side note, I just saw recently that Bud Light has fallen not from first to second to Modelo, which was what happened, what was it, a year or 2 years ago? I think it was a year ago. Now they've fallen to third. That Michelob Ultra has actually taken over Bud Light. So their stocks are actually continuing to drop. But is this good tactics? I would assume that many people probably feel that not so much. But I mean, based on the response and based on my own experience with progressives, they wouldn't care, especially we look back to 2020, the people who are all about the mask and getting the jab, they would put you and your children in a concentration camp. And so are they an existential threat or are they not? And depending on how you respond to that question, I think is going to depend on how you feel about potentially people getting fired for things they say. I saw multiple teachers got fired. People on school boards got fired. And the one that was most famous was the woman who was working at Home Depot, which, again, God bless her. I know she probably works for minimum wage, but she posted about how she wished that the shooter was successful in taking off Donald Trump's head. And then libs of TikTok, they called Home Depot and they fired that person immediately. Now, what is it? Bernard Marcus is the Jewish man who owns Home Depot, and he has been a supporter financially of Donald Trump back in 2016. He gave a significant amount of money to the Trump campaign. And again, interesting connection there. But I see a furthering, again, if people are getting fired from places like Home Depot, also that I could see a conservative response where they're more likely to purchase things from Home Depot. And so what is the, just like the Bud Light phenomenon, how does all this cancel culture and even the right using cancel culture against the left, how does that all play out? I'll let you guys come to your own conclusions, but interesting. And then people on the fence. I saw so many people, and even in my own life, people who didn't have TDS, don't hate Donald Trump, probably not the most politically savvy people. Like I have plenty of criticisms of Trump and the LGBTQ, his inability to hire the right people, him being a sort of liberal Democrat from the 90s. There's a lot of things I disagree with. And there's things I do appreciate: criticism of the Federal Reserve, promotion of Bitcoin, U.S. manufacturing, being energy independent. You know, you weigh the pros and the cons, but so many people came out now in favor of Donald Trump after this happened. And I think, again, it has to do with how these memetic influences impact them, whether at a conscious or subconscious level. And so we also saw Elon Musk respond and the new super PAC he's creating. And again, I want to show you guys another another memetic influence here. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, there it is. It's right up here. So I posted this, and this got, this was going around the internet. I wasn't the only one. A bunch of people did, but Brian Krasenstein, they're Jewish progressives. You've probably seen him and his brother on X. Elon Musk, this was like the day after, said, wow, steak and eggs with coffee in the morning really feels like a power up. I would throw nicotine in there. It's a real power up. And Brian responds, sounds like a heart attack in the long term. So again, steak and eggs, high protein, helps with testosterone. My typical breakfast is oatmeal with cinnamon and blueberries. Just the memetics, right? Just the memetics of it are so on point. It's hilarious. And so I had to bring that up because it reinforces the whole general ethos of the stream. Now, I'm not going to play this whole video, but this was just a quick thing in regards to all these NFL players also quickly showing support for Donald Trump after this happened, just the memetic influence.
Cornerback of the Seattle Seahawks posted on July 13th, Trump next president confirmed. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver of the Miami Dolphins, posted, waiting on someone to post a Simpson clip saying they predicted it. On Instagram, after the attempted assassination, Nick Bosa, defensive end for the San Francisco 49ers, posted a picture of him and Trump in black and white at a UFC fight. We have so many NFL reactions to the attempted assassination on Trump, and also some stuff at the end of the video that shot Trump. An hour after that post, he posted, Trump took a bullet for America. 2 hours later, Marlon Humphrey posted, thank God. Marlon Humphrey has also claimed that his teammate
so Lamar Jackson. Anyway, the video goes on and shows how all these like top-rate NFL players were voicing support for Trump. I saw Walmart is now carrying the MAGA hat, which I thought was surprising. Again, highlights that there has been a serious cultural shift here that, why would the MAGA hat, would get people beat up, and now Walmart is selling the hat after the assassination attempt. Very interesting, nonetheless. So I wanted to say, guys, smash that like for everybody who's here. And if you want to show some support for the stream, you have questions or comments you want to add to everything that's going on in regards to the memetics, the semiotics of this situation, feel free to send a super chat using Streamlabs, Dono Chat, or YouTube if you prefer to use YouTube. And if you'd like to gift a COTEL Crew membership to some of the people in the chat, I know they always appreciate that. So I'd greatly appreciate any support for you guys who are here and want to show support. And so I think it's interesting that so many UFC fighters, NFL players, professional athletes showed support immediately after Trump, because I think it connects back to the memetics of competition, masculinity, power, strength, all these different things. And of course, there was a cart boy at one of the golf resorts that the next morning after the attempt, Trump went and played golf, and he was reported, and supposedly this has been confirmed to be true, but who knows, that he sunk like a 20 to 30 foot putt. And when he hit it, it had like 2 feet of break, that he said, unlike the liberals, I don't miss. So again, just funny in the response. Now, I want to start getting into the RNC convention itself. And one, I want to begin with some of the protesters, because all these videos were coming out of the protesters. There was a protest outside the RNC convention that was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I couldn't believe, again, just the memetics of it, how many of the protesters had COVID masks on in 2024. And again, the next day, Joe Biden claims to have contracted COVID as well. So again, how all that memetically connects, I think, is really interesting. But here's just one example of a guy. Now, there's a bunch of young people that were outside the rally protesting. Many of them still had surgical masks over their face. Now, we did a whole stream on magical initiations, shamanic initiations, and how masks are so important in regards to the transition of identity, that most initiation rituals involve some type of masking of the face to symbolize the transition of one identity to the next. And I believe that 2020 was certainly indicative of that for many people in regards to the conformity of the authoritarian central government system and being submissive to it. And that these people then can compete in a way that they can't traditionally compete. I just highlighted all these athletes, fighters, this type of thing. And competition is inherently masculine. And I would argue the people who, the mask Nazis and this type of thing, one of the reasons why they are so forceful about you wearing a mask, whether you have one, whether you believe that they were efficacious or not, is it's a form of compliancy hierarchy. They can't compete in the real world, but they can compete when it comes to compliancy to the narrative. And the fact that people are still wearing this, I think, is very, very interesting. So here's one guy right here. I want a woke president. And it shows Donald Trump. I don't know if he was blinking here. I saw videos going around claiming he was sleeping at the RNC convention, which was actually during a prayer service. But check out this guy.
Woke. So basically, wokeism is just be awake to what's happening in your world. What's happening, what's going on, and how you can be able to counteract for that. So basically, that's what I can say wokeism is today.
Well, do you think Biden's awake?
He needs a little waking, but we got two devils. But you have to pick the least of the two devils that are there. Whoa.
And another thing I wanted to also highlight was, where was this? This was in the bookmarks. A man who had a sign. Here it is. Thomas Matthew Crooks is an American hero. And again, just the semiotics. It's interesting that he's covering his face with this. So here's a video of this man. He had apparently this dirt bike right here. This is some of the protesters. And he has a poster here that says RIP Thomas Matthew Crooks, an American hero, with a picture of him that was being used by the media. I do think it's interesting that the media used such an old photo of him with an American flag t-shirt on. you can take that how you will. But why is he standing there with his mouth covered, right? With part of his face covered. Now, I think there's something that's inherently inherent within these leftists, whether they're wearing the face mask or they're covering them face with the poster, that is like, how do I want to phrase it? They're not confident in themselves, right? They're hiding behind something that gives them a sort of anonymity. But that's just a general theme that I wanted to highlight that I've seen multiple times. Now, in regards to the RNC, JD Vance, this was the big news that JD Vance was elected or chosen by Trump to become the vice president nominee with him for president. And he's from Appalachia. His mother was a drug addict. He was raised by his grandmother, and he's married to an Indian woman, which I saw caused a lot of discussion among some of the conservative circles. And what are the semiotics of that, right? Of interracial marriages. I know that's a contentious topic for some people. But he mentioned that he wanted to be buried in a graveyard in Eastern Kentucky that goes back 6 generations with his family. And again, just looking at the memetics, I want to show you a response by MSNBC picking up on everything that I'm trying to lay forth here in regards to patriarchy, masculinity, national identity, patriotism, and why they think that this is a form of white male supremacy, that he wants him and his Indian wife to be buried in the graveyard that his ancestors go back 6 generations have been buried in. So check this out.
Sort of a paragraph, at least, about this plot in Eastern Kentucky where his 6 generations of his family are buried. And his hope is that his wife and he are eventually laid to rest there and their kids follow them. And I sort of understand the idea of sharing the burial plot, but it also it reveals someone who believes that the history that the family should inherit, and indeed the history that should be determinative in the story of the Vance family, is the history of the Eastern Kentucky Vances.
So why would that be? Why would that be sort of natural, where the man is the patriarch of the family, the man is the head of the family? Again, indicative of the way in which Christ is the head of the church from a Christian perspective. And she is very upset the fact that he made a public comment that he wants him and his Indian wife and their 3 children to be buried in this particular cemetery. Again, highlighting the same memetic effect that I'm discussing.
And not the Vances from San Diego, which is where his wife is from and where her Indian parents are from.
Well, their last names wouldn't be Vance because they aren't married to JD. Only his wife is, who took his last name.
But in America, it doesn't always have to be the white male lineage that that defines the family history, that branch of the tree supersedes all else. And I just think the construction of this notion reveals a lot about someone who fundamentally believes in the supremacy of whiteness and masculinity. And it's couched in a sort of halcyon, revisitation of his roots, but it is actually really revealing about what he thinks matters and who America is. And that America is a place for people with a shared Western background. And that is the idea of America. That is the nation of America that he wants to resurrect.
And I saw other comments. See, JD Vance he had a speech the night before. So this was on RNC convention day 3 that evening, talking about how America is a people. It's not an abstract idea. And Ben Shapiro took umbrage with this, because if America is a people, then that means we have a shared identity, a shared history, as JD Vance said. And so you can see how upset this was and irritating to the liberal media that this was even said publicly. But this is something that is essential for any sort of national unity. Whether you're black or white, we do have a shared history. And America is a people. It's not some abstract idea. And this is true for, again, this multiculturalism. If you take all the Japanese off the island of Japan and replace them with people from India, is it still Japan? No, because Japan isn't an idea. It's the collection of people who create a culture and a community. And the same thing is true with any nation. And this is part of why, again, getting back to the semiotics of what was the slide that actually the shooter attempted to take out Trump on, it was about mass immigration. I think, again, just memetically, all this stuff is really interestingly connected. So I wanted to point that out. Now, another thing I wanted to highlight is regards to the RNC convention and some of the memetics there. Now, the first one is Amber Rose speaking. This was a huge controversy. She's a porn star. She dates rappers. She has an OnlyFans. She is a degenerate person. Just 6 months ago, she was promoting Satanism. I'm not kidding. And so she was given a speaking position at, I don't know if it was day 1 or day 2 at the RNC convention. And I agree, Rachel was talking a lot about this, how we don't, nothing about her is conservative just because now she wants to vote for Trump. And so the semiotics of it, the memetics of it, though, it seems like the RNC was just trying to take people from all different backgrounds to try to get as many people into this big tent as possible. So Amber Rose and all her 24 million followers on Instagram. Then you had Harmeet Dillon. She's a Sikh, and she gave a prayer to Waheguru, which is translated as "Wow God," apparently, or "Wow Guru" or "Guru." And the Sikh tradition, Sikhism is a mixture. It comes from northern India and the Punjab region, and the Sikhism, Guru Nanak is the founder, and it's kind of a mixture between Islam and Hinduism, but we see the paganism, the ecumenism, as we talked about earlier. Elpidophoros, Archbishop Elpidophoros of the Go-Arch Church, he was one of the first one to give the opening prayer at the RNC convention, and he didn't end the prayer in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Now, we know that Archbishop Elpidophoros is a pro-ecumenist, pro-LGBTQ. He marched with BLM. He is a subverter and a nefarious figure within the Orthodox Church, and even the Greek people back in Greece are very upset with him. So there's been talks that he may be being lined up to become the next patriarch of Constantinople. But based on his popularity within Greece itself, I think there might be a reason to think that won't be able to happen. But I just wanted to bring up that. And then the homosexuality, this was something that also came up during the RNC convention, is that, as I mentioned, for the first time, the Republicans took out that marriages between a man and a woman as their official platform. Now, that is certainly a compromise on my Christian values, but I think what they're trying to do is just get more and more people to potentially vote in this election at the compromising of core values, which I don't think is right, but just trying to talk about what I think they're trying to do. That seems to be the thing. And then if you watch the RNC convention, you cannot not notice the worship of Israel. It was overt and explicit. And me coming at this from an Orthodox perspective, I saw it as the Antichrist spirit. And I suspect even at the DNC convention, you're going to see the same thing, because the Israeli lobby is the most influential lobby in America, and they dominate American politics. That's just a fact. And it doesn't matter if it's Joe Biden or if it's Donald Trump or it's Kamala Harris, that power structure isn't going away. And as an Orthodox Christian, because I saw so many boomers and Christians, and even like Lauren Boebert, the congresswoman, Republican congresswoman, she went on about how it's like every Christian's duty to protect Israel because they're the chosen people. Now, this comes from dispensational theology, which believes that Jews are still the chosen people, and that Israel, the state of Israel, founded by the Rothschilds, Balfour Declaration, you guys know the whole rigmarole, that they are still the chosen people. And even Pope Frank has said that Catholics shouldn't convert the Jews because they're already saved. This flies right in the face of our Orthodox faith. And shout out to Father Turbo, who has said before, you cannot be an Orthodox Christian and support Zionism because we are Israel. The Orthodox Church is Israel. Israel are those who wrestle with God. Again, going back to the Old Testament, and there was a nation of Israel, but as Christ came, dissolving the distinction between Jew and Gentile, Israel, those who uphold the second covenant, not the first covenant of Moses, the second covenant, that is Israel. And so this is where, as an Orthodox Christian, it's kind of hard to watch the RNC and the Republican movement, because in my worldview, they're promoting the thing that is ultimately leading us towards the one world government of the Antichrist himself. And so I describe this as the devil's alchemy, just looking at the memetics of the RNC convention. we've talked about patriarchy, masculinity, the spirit to fight, family, and how all this energy, this massive energy that was behind Trump after this assassination attempt is in an alchemical way is being utilized to fervor more and more support for the state of Israel. I didn't hear anybody at the RNC convention ever mention Palestine or ever mention the plight of the people in Gaza who are still being bombarded and being genocided by the state of Israel. And I don't see how any true Christian could support this. I saw John Rich, the country music singer. He recently came out with a song called Revelation, and he was going on about the Schofield Bible in a recent combo with Tucker Carlson. In the Schofield Bible, John Darby, you guys are probably familiar. It was one of the Schofield Bible is one of the first Bibles to have notes inside the Bible itself, and it promoted dispensationalism. It promoted the idea of the rapture, a pre-tribulation eschatology that the Christians, the chosen people, are going to be uplifted into the sky so that they won't have to face the tribulation of the end times. And as John Rich highlighted in his conversation with Tucker Carlson, and they were kind of hinting at it. I don't know if John Rich was picking it up, but Tucker made a comment that the Schofield Bible is clearly influencing our geopolitical relationship with certain nations, i.e. Israel. John Rich, I don't know if he connected that dot or fully understood, but he was more concerned with that if people believe in a pre-trib eschatology, that they're going to be more susceptible to worshiping the Antichrist, because when the tribulation comes, they're going to bow down thinking that it hasn't come yet. When the signs of the end times come, they're not going to be conscious with eyes and ears of discernment to know what exactly is happening. So I thought that was interesting. But again, in regards to all the Israeli stuff, and it was clearly a memetic sign of who dominates American politics. So I had all these positive things to say about the Trump assassination, the men, Corey Comparatore, God rest his soul and God bless his family. But when you watch the RNC, I couldn't help but get a feeling watching it of a mixture between boomer cringe and this Israeli Zionist worship that is so overt and in your face that they weren't allowed. I imagine that you wouldn't even be allowed to take stage at the RNC convention and not or state anything that was critical of the state of Israel, which again, memetically is indicative of who really has power in this country. Anyways, I digress. Another point in regard to the RNC convention that memetically was the boomer cringe music. So I remember watching night 4, and the band that kept playing, I thought it's like they were playing like 60s, 70s rock songs, things that you would hear if you go to your local, veterans of foreign wars, the VFW. If you go there and you're drinking beer with some of the old people, it was like that music scene. And memetically, I want to say that, one, it was boomer cringe, but at the same time, there was sort of a generational uniting. There were so many young people in the audience, and people were like partying at the RNC convention. And so I thought, again, memetically, that was interesting because it was like, there's so much animosity to the different generations, especially between Gen Z, millennials, and the boomers. And we've done whole streams criticizing boomer mentality being the first generation to grow up with the television and how susceptible they are to various propaganda methods. But I was just trying to look at the memetics of the music, memetics of the sort of general scenario. And it was like this generational uniting of these young people with the sort of boomer cultural ethos. And of course, Kid Rock performed on night 4 before Trump went out and, played American Badass and songs like that. And what does he represent memetically? Well, if you guys watch the music video of American Badass, he's talking about growing up in a trailer park, trying to get a double wide. It's the mixture of like American rock and roll and American rap music. The whole song American Badass is talking about all these country and rock and roll people he likes, AC/DC and ZZ Top, right? And then also like Grandmaster Flash, the Beastie Boys, rap culture in general. And so Kid Rock, in an interesting way, memetically represents the unification of like poor whites and hip hop black culture, which again, just looking at the memetics is interesting. Of course, Hulk Hogan, Dana White spoke. Hulk Hogan, the memetics of that, a big muscular white guy, his whole, again, the Hulk Hogan, American warrior type spirit. And then Dana White, you know, somebody who's known to say his mind and speak his mind, at one point in the speech said that I didn't come out here and nobody's going to tell me what to say. He's one of the close friends of Trump. Again, just interesting. A lot of white male patriarchal spirit that was present. Now I want to get to the Trump family, and I wanted to show you guys a few different videos in regards to the memetics of everything and how it potentially influenced. Now, Trump doesn't smile very much. You hardly see his teeth. Like, he'll smile, but you don't really show his teeth. And I thought one of the more humanizing events was when his granddaughter, Kai Trump, who's actually a great golfer, very pretty girl, here she is. She's 16 or 17. And she gave a speech trying to kind of humanize Donald Trump. And just to see his face, I pulled this video just so you guys can see it. Because what does that memetically represent? A patriarch, Donald Trump, family, children, grandchildren. This, again, this sort of patriarchal structure that's biblical. Memetically, it worked. And then the physiognomy of the Trump family. I mean, let's just face it, they're all pretty good looking people. And so I said they're white, good physiognomy, successful, articulate people. Where Trump sits, it was almost like watching the Roman emperor, you know, like the movie Gladiator, where, you know, the emperor gives a thumbs up. With the way that Trump was sitting there surrounded by his family, and then the way the camera kept cutting to him, you almost got like an imperial vibe, which is going to connect with the last thing we're going to watch, was his Tucker Carlson speech, talking about how what he feels is that, you know, there was a transition, that we live in a different world, and that clearly the people have spoken, that Trump is the national leader, this type of thing, whatever, however you feel about that. But just look at the memetics of this. A pretty 17-year-old girl in high school who apparently is very, very good at golf. She's on the same team that Charlie Woods, Tiger Woods' son, is on. But check this out.
I am the granddaughter of Donald Trump. I'm speaking today to share the side of my grandpa that people don't often see. To me, he's just a normal grandpa. He gives us candy and soda when our parents aren't looking. He always wants to know how we're doing in school. When I made the high honor roll, he printed it out to show his friends how proud he was of me. He calls me during the middle of the school day to ask how my golf game is going and tells me all about his. But then I have to remind him that I'm in school and I'll have to call him back later. When we play golf together, if I'm not on his team, he'll try to get inside of my head. I know. And he's always surprised that I don't let him get to me. But I have to remind him I'm a Trump too.
And so I just want to highlight when she said, I'm a Trump too, again, family name, family patronage, ancestral identity. That was one of the few times that Donald Trump shows his teeth during a smile. He rarely ever actually shows his teeth. I just thought that was very, memetically, very, very interesting. Let's watch the rest.
Even when he's going through all these court cases, he always asks me how I'm doing. He always encourages me to push myself to be the most successful person I can be. Obviously, he sets the bar pretty high, but who knows? Maybe one day I'll catch him. On Saturday, I was shocked when I heard that he has been shot, and I just wanted to know if he was okay. It was heartbreaking that someone would do that to another person. A lot of people have put my grandpa through hell, and he's still standing.
Anyways, you guys kind of get the point. We'll move on from that one. But there's a few interesting tidbits. So apparently Donald Trump Jr., according to him, Kai and one of her friends, he took them fishing when they found out that Trump was shot. And there was a funny anecdotal story that Don Jr. said that when the family couldn't reach Donald Trump because they blocked all communication to him as soon as that happened, the Secret Service, I guess this is routine, and they weren't able to talk to him till about an hour and a half after the shooting event. And I guess they were on a big family call, and everybody was worried and talking. And then Donald Trump Jr. said, to break the ice, he said, how's the hair? And Trump responded, I guess he was kind of shocked that he said that. And then he responded by saying, Don, the hair is pretty good. So whatever you think about that, pretty funny story nonetheless. And then again, the memetics of the event, I want to bring up his calm, assertive entrance. This video right here is him entering the RNC convention 72 hours after he had been shot. Trump decided that he wasn't going to change schedule, went along with the schedule as planned, flew to Milwaukee the evening of the next day. Most people suspected that wasn't going to happen. And then this is his first public appearance after the shooting. And I just want to play this. Again, just look at the memetics of it.
J. Trump. If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again. Just my children and my wife. Thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. Be an American, where at least I know I'm free. Not only forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. Sing it! God bless the USA.
So, just memetically, whether you think everything was staged or not, my only point of emphasis here is he's surrounded by only male Secret Service. So this was a notable difference, is that he had no female Secret Service agents. We talked about the memetics earlier, of the fat, overweight woman who couldn't holster her gun. No women were part of the Secret Service. Big, tall, white men are there to protect him. He enters during, was it Lee Greenwald's Proud to Be an American song, which the general premise is talking about men who died defending the country. Again, you just those semiotics, I think, are really powerful. Whether you like him or not, that's not the point. The point is just how it's going to memetically influence culture itself. And the other one that I want to show you, the last one, is the entrance of Melania Trump, because as I mentioned, the prevalence of like beautiful women at the RNC was noted. And Melania Trump is so elegant, traditionally feminine. And the way that she entered on night 4 was to classical music, which I found, again, memetically very powerful. It wasn't the rock bands that a lot of the other people were entering in. It wasn't the boomer cringe music. It wasn't even Lee Greenwald's Proud to Be American. It was like beautiful classical music. So this was Melania Trump's entrance to the RNC. And so I think there's something memetically powerful there in regards to her elegance, classy, the classical music, the way she dressed, right? It's not overly sexual, yet it's incredibly tasteful and beautiful, whether you like them or not. That's not my point. I got my criticism. We've already discussed that. But, and then Donald Trump representing the sort of like overt, masculine, doesn't apologize type of behavior that the left hates. And then his wife being the exact opposite. Again, I think would probably drive a lot of feminists crazy. And so just the memetic impact of that, I think is very, very interesting. So I'm going to conclude, guys. We got a few super chats. Let me read those real quick. Over on the Dono chat, we had $5 come in from John Anon, who says, the door of compassion open unto us, blessed Theotokos, that hoping in thee we might not perish, but through thee may be delivered from adversities, and for thou art the salvation of the Christian race. Amen, John Anon. Thank you very much. And then CJ throws in $10, says, blessings only up from here. Absolutely, CJ. Thank you very much for that. And then let me check Streamlabs. Looks like nothing came in over on Streamlabs. Okay, so now I want to conclude with the Tucker Carlson speech. And feel free to send in any super chats or comments regarding what's been discussed here. Maybe you guys disagree. That's totally fine. We can take disagreements as well. But I'm going to play Tucker's speech at the RNC, which I think was the most articulate in regards to what's happening and everything that I discussed in regards to the symbols and the memetics. So what's happening in America right now. So check this out.
Gentlemen, please welcome journalist, author, and American citizen, Tucker Carlson.
So fun! Thank you! Oh, this is wild. Thank you. I've been good to see you. Thank you. I feel like I know about half the people in the room. This is wild. What are you doing? Justin Wells. Thank you, guys. Okay. Can I just say, Peter Navarro is back. Welcome to Peter Navarro. Suffering the fate that has happened to so many who are friends with Donald Trump. Thank you for having me. I have been to many conventions. I have never been to a more fun convention or a convention with better vibes. They literally let Navarro out of prison. First of all, thank you. This feels a lot different from what I thought it was going to feel like. I can't hear you, but I know it's something good. So I watched the video of what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania about 50 times. I think I was one of about 8 billion people around the world who watched it. And the more I watched it, the more it struck me that everything was different after that moment. Everything. And this convention is different. The nation is different. The world is different. Donald Trump is different. When he stood up after being shot in the face, bloodied, and put his hand up, I thought at that moment, that was a transformation. This was no longer a man. Well, I think it was divine intervention, but the effect that it had on Donald Trump, he was no longer just a political party's nominee or a former president or a future president. This was the leader of a nation. And I think there's a difference. I've spent most of my life in Washington where the president is at the top of the pyramid, everyone wants to be the president. But if you think about it, the presidency comes with great power, obviously. But if you think about it, that is a title that is bestowed by a process of some sort that can be subverted. And in the end, it does not confer by itself, as no title does, legitimacy. Just because you call yourself the president doesn't mean that much inherently. I can call my dog the CEO of Hewlett Packard. It doesn't mean she is. No, it's true. And you hate to say it, but it is also true, is a fact, that you could take, I don't know, a mannequin, a dead person, and make him president. If you, no, you could. I'm just saying theoretically possible. With enough cheating, that could happen. But being a leader is very different. It's not a title. It's organic. You can't name someone a leader. A leader is the bravest man. That's who the leader is. That is true in all human organizations. This is a law of nature. And in that moment, Donald Trump, months before the presidential election, became the leader of this nation. That was the most obvious to me. And I have to say, you know, I think it changed him. He reached out to Trump within hours of it that night. And what he said to me that night, having just been shot in the face, he said not a single word about himself. He said only how amazed he was and how proud he was of the crowd, which didn't run. And I thought two things. The first thing I thought was, well, of course they didn't run. His courage gave them heart. A leader's courage gives courage to his people. And the second thing I thought was, this is the selfish guy I've been hearing about for 9 years, really? Not a word about himself? About his people, period. And the second thing I noticed, which I don't think anyone has remarked upon in public, but I'm just going to since I don't have a script, like why not, is that he turned down the most obvious opportunity in politics to inflame the nation after being shot. To inflame the nation, which is an opportunity that almost every other politician I've ever met, and certainly his opponents, would have taken instantly. And they would have said, well, what is this? How did he get shot? Like, how did this happen? And those are real questions that we have to get to the bottom of. But in the moments, the days, the week after the shooting, he did not say that. He did his best to bring the country together. And I thought, this is the divisive figure. This is the irresponsible person. No, this is the most responsible, unifying behavior of a leader I think I've ever seen.
Now, I watched Trump's speech, and you know, he's not exactly the most articulate guy in the world. He's not the most erudite figure I've ever seen. So, you know, I agree with Tucker in regards to the memetic impact of the entire event has galvanized so many people that clearly the entire political energy is behind Donald Trump right now. Now, casting him as the ultimate unifying figure, I don't know about that. And I certainly don't, you know, again, consider him to be a thought leader or anything like that. But his masculinity, his alphaness is part of why he's going to be elevated as the ultimate presidential nominee. Like, who knows if the election is going to be real or not? We've already discussed that at the opening of the stream. Probably not. And I wouldn't be surprised if they win, the Democrats, and you know, I can't imagine they're going to let Trump into office. I really can't imagine that happening. So despite all this energy, I suspect moving forward, like what's next, I wouldn't be surprised if World War III breaks out, martial law happens, a new virus, something I think is going to happen before November 5th. I cannot in my mind see them allowing Donald Trump and the people around him. Now, whether he's going to hire the Boltons and the Nikki Haley's of the world again, God willing, he doesn't do that. But he's already denounced Project 2025. I'll let you come to your own conclusions, whether that's for publicity so that they can get elected. I don't know. But, you know, I don't see him as the ultimate unifying figure. I see the memetics of masculinity, patriarchy, competency, family, these type of things actually being the unifying force for people who ultimately want to resonate with that energy. That's what I believe.
So the question is, where is he leading us? And I could go on for hours, but let me just sum it up. I do think the entire point from the famous escalator ride 9 years ago until today of Donald Trump's public life has been to remind us of one fact, which is a leader's duty is to his people, to his country, and to no other. That's the point. That's the only point. And another word for this is democracy. Democracy, in case you're a little sick of being beaten in the face with democracy on television, actual democracy is the proposition that the citizens of a country own that country. They're not renters, they're not serfs, they're not slaves, they are the owners of the country. And for that to be true, their leaders have to represent them, which is another way of saying they have to do what the people want them to do, or a close approximation thereof. But if they completely ignore what people want, not just 1 year, but generationally, say for 50 years, then it may be, I don't know what, it's not a democracy. And so I think the entire Trump project, paradoxically, is attacked as an enemy of democracy, is to return democracy to the United States. Hey, let's pay attention to what people actually want. And the lack of interest in that question in Washington is something that ultimately drove me out of the city after 35 years. Lawmakers stepping over the prostrate bodies of their fellow citizens ODing on drugs to go cast votes to send money to some foreign country. Yeah, actually, we've lost more Americans from drugs in the past 4 years than we lost in World War II. Yeah. Our bloodiest war, more than we lost in World War II. Does anybody care? It is pathetic. It is pathetic. And do you hear a single word from Washington about doing anything about it? We know where the drugs are coming from. We know the supply routes. The U.S. military spent billions bombing the Ho Chi Minh Trail. You don't see our commander-in-chief suggesting that we use our military to protect our country or the lives of its citizens. No, that's for Ukraine. And it's too much, actually. It's too insulting. It's too insulting. It's a middle finger in the face of every American. It's a very clear statement, which is unmistakable. And that is, we don't care about you. And Donald Trump, whatever you say about him, and I think he's a wonderful person. I know him well. By the way, the funniest person I've ever met in my life, actually. You can't be funny without perspective. Or without empathy, which is true. But everything else about Trump aside, he actually cares because he's interested in the people who live here because that's his job. A father's job, his duty is to his family. An officer's duty is to his men. A president's duty is to his citizens. And he seems to be the only one who thinks that. And in his choice for vice president, J.D. Vance, he's made that really clear.
Now, I have my own questions with J.D. Vance, and we talked about the Peter Thiel, all this different stuff. So I'm personally not sold on J.D. Vance myself, but again, I'll let Tucker finish the speech.
J.D. Vance, I'll say this about him, is a thoroughly decent man, and I'll just admit it, a friend of mine, one of the very few politicians in Washington who actually is very close to his own wife, which is wonderful to see. And she's wonderful, actually. But J.D. Vance has views that are closer to Trump's voters than anyone else in Washington in office. Therefore, he's the vice president. That's called democracy.
Now, that is true. I don't know if you guys follow, again, X and like J.D. Vance and some of that stuff. The stuff, the memes, the things that he said totally resonates. Now, whether this is totally scripted, whether he's another inauthentic politician, I have no idea. I don't know J.D. Vance's sincerity. But in regards to a politician who represents, to the closest approximation, the millennial Gen Z conservative culture online, J.D. Vance certainly plays into that. Now, again, is it authentic? God willing, I hope so. But certainly, memetically, that is connecting the Trump boomer MAGA phenomenon with the followers of J.D. Vance, online culture, millennial Gen Z, right-wing memes, this type of thing. So I think there's an interesting dynamic there that clearly the secession is moving. This is why I think it's almost white pilling that let's pretend, because we don't know about J.D. Vance's sincerity, let's pretend that he is the guy that people think he is. That is beneficial to moving the RNC and the Republican Party further to the right. Again, the Overton window shift. When I said what's next, what's happening, Overton window shift, millennial Gen Z, much more conservative, potentially us aligning with the Israeli war machine, connecting it back to Israel worship at the RNC and what I call the devil's alchemy. This win or die election that's coming up in November 2024. Are they going to kill Trump? Are they going to let him be president? He has all the political energy behind him. This type of thing. The PayPal mafia, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, all these things are true. But if JD Vance is who people think he is, I think that is a white pill, because it's showing that the Republican Party, despite all these compromises, I mean, what is conservatives? Conservatives don't conserve anything. And the fact that the RNC changed their platform on marriage, has, ecumenical prayers of pagan deities, Sikh gods, homosexuality, this type of thing. These are a compromising on the core values, but the people who follow JD Vance aren't going to compromise on those values. And I think that is a white pill for a generation moving forward. If, again, the country's still here or whatever, the country, as I mean, the federal government as it exists. If the Great World War happens, who knows what the state of America is going to be after that. According to the saints, it's going to be pretty nasty here in the United States, but who knows?
So I will stop on just one point, and that is what's happened over the past month since the debate, and particularly on Saturday in Butler. I think a lot of people are wondering, what is this? This doesn't look like politics. Something bigger is going on here. I think even people who don't believe in God are beginning to think, well, maybe there's something to this.
And that's what, again, highlighting today's stream on the minute, that is clearly something that's happening. Whether you like Trump or, again, and as we've said, tons of criticism. I see people in the live chat critical of Trump, conservatism, Republican. Agreed. I'm going to grant you all that stuff, guys. I totally agree. But there is a phenomenon that's happening here in the United States. And whether that's people coming closer to, God willing, the Holy Trinity and not some why guru prayer, that seems to be happening. Even people that I've spoke to who are kind of like apolitical millennials and guys I've talked to, and they're like, oh dude, I'm totally voting for Trump because of the fist pump, fight, the representation of all the memetics that we've discussed in the stream, what they mean.
Actually. And I'm starting to think it's going to be okay. Actually, I do think that. In the day after the midterm elections in 2018, Antifa came to my house. The Democratic Party's militia. Okay, I was at work. It was obvious when I was at work because it was public. My wife was home alone. They tried to come in through the front door. They terrorized her. She hid in our pantry. It was on television. It was horrible, actually. It was, I'm not whining about it. I wasn't getting shot in the face, but it wrecked our day. And the next morning, we're lying in bed, and the phone rings for my wife, and it's Donald Trump, who's not like a regular text buddy of Donald Trump's. She picks it up. Hello? Susie, it's Donald Trump. And it's coming through. I could hear it. I'm lying in bed. Oh. And the first thing he says is, I'm going to stand guard outside your house. And she goes, oh, it's so nice. And he says, I'll never forget this as long as I live. He says, there's a lot of hate out there. And she said, there is, Mr. President. And then he says, but there's a lot of love. There's a lot of love. And we are seeing that love. I don't think it's human love. And I'll just stop with this. I'm not always convinced that I'm on the right side. I've been on the wrong side many times. You'll never hear me say I'm on God's side or God's with me or even I'm with God. I want to be, not sure I am. But I will say this unequivocally and conclusively. God is among us right now. And I think that's enough. God bless you.
And that's what, again, the last thing that I want to say, what connects masculinity, patriarchy, fighting spirit, family? It is love. And what I suspect, again, the memetic influence is people who love the country. Now, not that Donald Trump's a savior, of course not. And we can't fix the beast system, right? I mean, the federal government is the beast system. But there is a uniting factor versus a factor that is incredibly divisive. And there was a video I'm not going to show you because we're going to wrap up the stream here, but it was of a MAGA supporter during these protests outside the RNC. And they went to the protesters and there was a black man and she was talking with him. And he was talking about how all the Trump supporters, the RNC, how they're all racist. And she said, well, why don't you come over here with the people waiting in line and we'll see if you experience racism. And so he goes over there with her, and the Trump supporters give him a hug, say, hey, you can come sit with me. You can join me in the convention. And he goes, man, you guys are really changing me. And she goes, well, let me put on a MAGA hat and go back over to your side and see what happens. And they go back over, and she's called a CUNT, a bitch. They're mocking her, calling her a Nazi bitch. I mean, multiple times. And it highlights, again, this difference in the United States. And again, the memetic power of these symbols. And there is a uniting force which seems to be behind Trump, whether that's God's favor. I mean, it seems to be providence. If the shooting was actual, which I believe it was, it does seem to be God's providence that he turned his head at the very last second. It does seem, if it was true, as we looked at the semiotics and the biblical message of what the ear represents, and the ear represents somebody hearing God, hearing truth, moving closer to Christ. According to Trump, he firmly is a stronger believer in God. He believes God's grace protected him. And this love of each other, your family, your nation, your community, this is the difference. And then I would say this is the stark contrast between this globalist, isolating, demonic, inverted force and potentially nationalism or whatever it is that's happening in the country behind Trump. So somebody said there's a reason Christ wasn't mentioned explicitly. He was mentioned explicitly multiple times. I watched the RNC. Now I'm no shill for the Republican Party, and I've already laid out my criticisms. But multiple people reference Jesus Christ specifically, especially, and I'll give credit where credit's due, especially the evangelical pastors. Franklin Graham, during his speech, was explicitly Jesus Christ and the Holy Trinity, which was unfortunately better than Archbishop El Pitaforos. So I'll grant you, there was clearly pagan prayers, ecumenism, homosexuality, porn stars with Amber Rose at the RNC convention. Agreed. But you can't say that Jesus Christ was never mentioned, because I watched it, and the biggest night when people were watching, when Franklin Graham gave his prayer, that was explicitly the Jesus Christ. Now, I'm no promoter of Protestantism. I have my own criticisms of Franklin Graham, but I just wanted to point that out. That is not true, that they never said Jesus Christ at the RNC convention. That's just not true. So anyways, guys, that's going to do today's stream. This was just a memetic overview of the entire RNC convention. We got a few super chats that came in. Shout out to Blue Skittle. He says, wish Trump was as based as the left thinks he is. Yeah, true. I totally agree with that. Again, I got plenty of criticisms of Donald Trump. This stream was not to elevate Donald Trump as some political hero. I'm an Orthodox Christian. That's not the case. It's never going to happen. I mean, I think Byzantine monarchy was ideal, but something is happening in the country. And how do you put your finger on that? What is happening in the country right now? And for me, again, the general points is masculinity, patriarchy, fighting spirit, family, and feminine women, feminine, beautiful women. This seems to be the motif. And I agree with Blue Skittle. I wish Trump was as base as the left thinks he is. But if even in his Democratic 90s Democrat milieu of ideas, if he does the mass deportation that he says he's going to do, if he elevates Bitcoin, if he brings back manufacturing in the United States and we go energy independent, those things directly benefit my life. And that would be worth his nomination, his elevation of the presidency itself. So that's my perspective on that. But I totally agree with Blue Skittle. I wish he was as base as the left thinks he is. And then John Anon throws in another $5. Thank you so much, John Anon. He says, if Saul of Tarsus, St. Constantine, and St. Vladimir of Kiev could be converted by God and become great leaders and apostles of nations, could there not be hope for the leader of America to make this country Christian? Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And again, we don't know. And Trump is a megalomaniac. I've talked about this before. And to a degree, I thought that was providence. That now Some people think Trump's false opposition. Maybe that's true. I don't know everything. Seems to me that he's an outsider of the system, and the system hates the idea of his supporters and him being put in back office. And we know the military industrial complex was against him when he was in office. But him being a megalomaniac and a narcissist, I think who would have been able to withstand all the media scrutiny, the indictments that have been leveled at him, and even an assassination attempt, if you think it's real, I do, and then going and never even breaking your schedule and going to the RNC convention the next day. Few people could do that. And if you weren't a megalomaniac, it'd be hard pressed for me to understand how you'd be able to respond to all that stuff and keep going. So is that providence? Maybe it is God's providence. I don't know. I'll just put it that way. But God willing, Christ has drawn Trump closer to him, and God willing, we become more of a Christian nation. And again, based on all the memetics we've discussed today, if more people decide that they're going to go back to church, whether that be some, Hillsong Protestant church or not, that's movement in the right direction. Because if those people continue to pursue truth, eventually they're going to find the Orthodox Church. Eventually they're going to change their mind on these sort of lukewarm, liberal social issues that, they vote, I'm physically conservative, but I'm socially liberal, this type of thing. I think it's a white pill. I think it's an opportunity for the younger generation to move the Overton window even further and build upon this energy. So God willing, that is the case. And we know that God's in charge of history. So whatever his will be done, that's my general position. So I agree with John Anon. If they can do that to Saul of Tarsus, who was beheading Christians, St. Constantine, St. Vladimir of Kiev, if God can convert those people to Orthodox Christians, not saying Trump's ever going to be Orthodox or we're ever going to have an Orthodox Christian president. I doubt that will ever happen for sure. But if the nation itself could even get closer to a conservative evangelical Christianity, that is beneficial to my family, that's beneficial to the nation, and that's beneficial for the future, my perspective. So that was all the super chats over on the Dono chat. And it doesn't look like any over on YouTube. So guys, I'm going to hop off here. I appreciate you all being here. Smash that like. And I will be back tomorrow with an Orthodox stream on the history of saints in the British Isles. That should be a lot of fun. And as I said, I'll be back on Tuesday with BLA. We have a sponsored stream going over the movie Master and Commander. So thank you all. Oh, and somebody kept asking about memetics, what memetics mean. I've already went over that. It has to do, like Richard Dawkins' theory of a meme has to do with a piece of information that's culturally analogous to those of a gene. It's a self-replicating unit of cultural ideas, symbols, and practices that can be transmitted from one mind to another through writing, speech, gestures, rituals, or immutable phenomenon with mimicked themes. And so that's my point with the memetic influence of the patriarchy, masculinity, family, that if those are embraced, more people have children, more men become the masculine leader, the patriarchal figure of the house, of their own house, not the house in regards to Congress, of their own house. That is incredibly beneficial to our family. So for those of you who don't know what a meme is, just look it up. Richard Dawkins is really credited with providing a lot of the theories that we use regarding the memetics and memes. So anyway, smash that like. I will see you all tomorrow in our stream covering Orthodox saints in the British Isles. So as always, until then, God bless.